Hey guys, Morgan here. Whoa, almost fell over. Morgan here with the Process 101, my new channel. This will be the first video of a series of videos I'd like to do every Monday called Music Monday, where I talk about an album, band, song, or something related to music, and kind of break it down why that's sort of important to me or the greater good or whatever. But we'll just have basically an open discussion about things. The first thing I want to talk about for this new series I'm doing is Slipknot's Iowa album. Slipknot is I'm sure everyone's very familiar with Slipknot. They came out in, I believe their debut album came out around 1998 or 99. I could be wrong. But they've been around quite a long time now. I found their first, this is before the internet too, of course. Well, the internet hadn't really taken off by then. I found them through a friend, and I was floored. Their debut album was just like nothing I'd ever heard. Same with this album, and that's why I'm talking about Iowa. In my opinion, Iowa is Slipknot's best album. Everything else after Iowa has been okay. I really liked Duality, Psychosocial, and their new album that just came out. Some of that stuff is pretty good too. But for me, the definitive album for Slipknot, and where they really honed in their sound, was Iowa for sure. Not that their first album isn't very good, but the sound on the first album is very raw. It's very, it's much more primal and a lot more aggression. I'm not going to go into detail about everything about the band or anything like that. I just want to talk about the album itself and the sound. I think this album, especially, and Slipknot, this sound could have never come out of the UK. This is American aggression at its best right here. This is high fructose corn syrup and MSG and sodium nitrate and living on hot dogs and TV dinners, and American, just that growing up in that like I would say mid 70s. Probably I think a lot of these band members were probably born in like the mid to early 70s. And you can definitely see where their aggression comes from. I was born in the mid-70s, so I see kind of the frustration in this album, and I can see where it comes out of it. Like I said, this could have never come out of the UK, where a lot of our bands that we now have influenced the greater, good of the music out there. Bands like, The Cure and the Smiths and the Beatles and all these bands that came out of the UK that highly influenced music in the US. This could have never come out of it. This is an album of the breakdown of the family unit, because this couldn't have come out of any other generation. You saw a lot of deterioration you saw high divorce rates in the 70s, broken homes, low income families and low-income housing, and living on processed foods and lots of high fructose corn syrup, and just that really truly American frustration of trying to get by paycheck to paycheck. And I think Corey Taylor, and I think it's a lot of, these guys have all been through a lot of trauma in their life. And I remember hearing an interview with Corey Taylor where he said, I hate to sleep. He found sleeping very bizarre. He thought the idea of laying down and becoming unconscious it weirded him out. And these sort of paranoid and weird ideas, what you in the psychology world you would call cognitive distortions, and weird things like that, only could have come from this generation of people. I think that's where you see a lot of this, especially the second, I think the first song is just somebody screaming. But the next song, number 2, People Equal Shit, that song really sums up America. And you can hear that. That's probably the best song on the album. In my opinion, People Equal Shit is the best song on the album. I mean, it's brutal from start to finish. This is a very brutal album. I mean, I know, Metal Alchemist, brutal, and all that. But this is a brutal album. This is so much aggression in this album, and also on their first album, there's just so much aggression and so much frustration. That's the main word I would definitely associate with this album, is just frustration. And you can hear it every beat, everything in this album is just frustration and anger and all that angst and paranoia, and it just flows over. And I think especially if you watch any of their live footage of them doing concerts or anything, it's highly aggressive. I think the clown's name is Sean. I can't remember his last name, but so many times I've seen that guy lash out at the crowd and jump out and get into fights, and just this very erratic behavior. And, me being a psychology major and just seeing this, it was just like, wow. And I've been to tons and tons of concerts, but I never did get to see Slipknot. But I do remember, like, and another album I would relate this to would be Korn's debut album. And I remember I saw Korn on their second tour, Life is Peachy, and I remember, being on the floor for the show, being very close down up front. I think it was like I've been to a couple more before that, but they weren't as aggressive. And I remember Korn coming out onto stage, and they just kicked in blind, and that explosion of just like there was such a big explosion in the crowd that I just got trampled to the ground and stomped on, and I was just so like in shock. And I think that's the same sort of vibe that this album, in a much more aggressive way than obviously Korn, but that's the other album I would relate to this, would be Korn's debut album. That album had that feel of American frustration. But yeah, I think overall, it's hard to read on the back of this. Yeah, like I said, I really like People Equal Shit, My Plague, Everything Ends. Obviously, the Heretic Anthem was the Heretic Anthem and Left Behind were their big songs on this. Those were the two big hits, and then People Equal Shit, which obviously none of this could get very much radio play, which is great because I think that's all crap. But I honestly, this is their best album, and I think, like I said, this only could have come from Americans. And like I said, they've done good stuff since then, but and it's a weird dynamics. You have, I think there's 8 of them, or at least there was 8, and Paul Gray passed away from drug overdose, and they lost the drummer, and it's escaping my mind right now what his name is. He quit the band, I believe. They had some sort of falling out, but that 8-piece dynamics, and especially you hear it on this album. There's a lot more of a lot more drums in this, and it's a lot more unified than it was. It's more chaos on the first album versus this Iowa album, which is much more tight. They tightened up that sound, and then they utilized the extra drumming and all the extra components that make this album really, really brutal. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to talk about the Iowa album really quick. Next Monday, I am probably going to do sort of a retrospective on Typo Negative, and talk about all of their albums and kind of give a retrospective of the last 20 plus years that Typo Negative was around for. So look for that video, guys, and a whole lot more coming soon. So thanks, guys. We'll see you later.